Hi, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner.
And our dog, Betty White.
Your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Could we have named it something more creative? Probably. But it's the name of our blog. It's our last name. We're on an adventure. Yada, yada, yada. After running our own business, working 24/7.
And don't forget a mental breakdown in between.
We made a lifestyle change and decided to make the most out of life.
We sold our house, most of our belongings, downsized, and moved to the coast.
We live life minimally, but fully.
We live each day as an adventure.
This show will help you learn how to live life more fully, with more intention, by experiencing more, and with less stuff.
We'll talk about our own experiences, interview others who have much to share by creating a spark in our lives.
Some days we'll share real-life ongoings of what we're going through, and others will talk about our favorite flavor of waffle.
Come join our adventure.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Shannon.
Betty White is here with us because she knows our guest today is a big animal lover. We are here for episode 12 of the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Today's episode is another Spark in Our Lives guest episode where we interview someone who has been, you guessed it, a spark in our lives.
Well, before we get to our guest, let's get to our review of the week. This one comes from Sue840.
Sue says, love this show. Having been someone who keeps a lot of stuff, this show is refreshing and makes me reevaluate the things that I keep and what holds me back from possibly living the life I desire. This couple makes me feel that I can truly have a different mindset and take the road of living a full life with less baggage. Great for business owners who want to avoid burnout too.
Wow.
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 Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, Sue. You're something.
You are something, Sue. That's great. It sounds like Sue may have benefited from our declutter challenge. If you want to jump on board with that, or maybe grab our travel prep list to save you time and not have to check luggage, because let me tell you something. There is not much worse than standing at that baggage carousel. Let me just let you in on something. If you ever travel with me, you better not check luggage because you're going to get left behind. I do not stand at that luggage carousel.
Folks, I have a personal account of that. I'm kidding, but
yeah, Jerry knows better.
But I have been aware that could be a possibility.
You do not check luggage when you're with me. You do not check luggage because you will get left behind. There's nothing worse than having to stand and wait for that luggage carousel, and you're just, you know what you're doing? You're just missing out on time that you could be vacating. Okay. So you can download our travel prep list to save you time and enjoy more time on your vacation, or any other resources that we offer. You can go to arneradventures.com/resources. And I am willing to bet you that is what Sue is benefiting from.
And if you'd like to be our review of the week and get the chance to receive a gift from Sugar Wish, please take a moment and give us a 5-star review or rating. We have an easy link for you all to follow. It's lovethepodcast.com/Arner Adventures, but we will also link it for you in the show notes. Really helps us so much to support us in that way.
Listen, let's go ahead and get to the guest today. Now, Jerry wasn't at this virtual meeting. He missed out. He was probably waiting at some baggage carousel somewhere. No, he was on his own adventure.
Or the baggage carousel at the Food Lion, maybe.
Right. Our guest today is Tricia O'Malley. Tricia is a best-selling author on, everything. New York Times, Wall Street, everything. She's a best-selling author. She lives on a Caribbean island, living the dream. She is near and dear to our hearts because she's an animal advocate, a scuba diver, living her best life, and we love her story. We're thrilled to have had her agree to come on the podcast. As always, we always say, we can never, ever believe when someone says yes to being a guest on the podcast. And she agreed to be on. She epitomizes adventure and is a true spark in our life. I'll tell you that the books that I love are, of course, the ones that she writes that are all about travel and adventure. and I'm actually getting ready to start her mermaid series, and I'm excited about starting those series. So anyway, let's just get to the episode so you can meet her, right?
Right. Yeah. And who wouldn't be excited about beginning a mermaid series?
That's right. That's right. She believes in mermaids. I believe in mermaids. So let's get to it.
Let's go.
We have an exciting guest today, one who can take you on an adventure anytime you want, through writing, that is. Our guest is Tricia O'Malley. Tricia O'Malley is a New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal bestselling author of contemporary romance, paranormal romance, and cozy mystery novels. She lives in the Caribbean, we're not jealous at all, with her handsome Scotsman and her dog Blue. An avid scuba diver, Tricia spends much of her time underwater, dreaming up new stories while photographing the beautiful sea life. Tricia loves fun vacation reads, believes in mermaids, I do too, and has a serious travel addiction. We can also relate to that. She discovers her inspiration on the go, and you'll find her books set in beautiful settings with characters who deserve a happily ever after. With over 3 million books read, Tricia's stories have touched hearts around the world. To see some of her underwater or island life photos, visit her on Facebook or Instagram, which we're going to link down in the show notes. Welcome, Tricia. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited. Especially I feel like we have so much synergy and also jealousy of your lifestyle. So I know you write about all of these places, and I know that I guess your actual life is in the Caribbean. Are you in the Caribbean right now?
I am in the Caribbean right now. I live here full time.
Okay.
And I actually am under the air conditioning, and I have as you can see behind me, I've got my blinds closed against the sun right now. So yes, it's a very breezy, warm day here.
What is the temperature currently where you are?
I think it's 87 today.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. No, we're totally not jealous at all about that.
And this is our cold season, actually. Our hot season is August and September. And that's where it's quite common for much of the island to, restaurants will just close for a month at a time and people just leave and go visit. Yeah, you have to get in the water several times a day to cool your body heat down.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. Well, a lot of you know, if you've been following us on Instagram and our blog, is that I was introduced to Tricia through her book Miss Bitch, which I loved. And without giving it away, if you haven't read it, because you all should, and we'll also link to that down in the show notes, is that the character goes through some heartache, but decides to travel the world and go on some adventures. But when I finished it and read that it was based on your story, I was like, what? And that it was the first book I had read of yours. And I was just so excited. And I didn't know at that time that you had other series, but that book was based on your story.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it was.
And so you had written many books before that, but what that was not your first standalone, but what made you decide to write that book?
So it's, with writing in series, you kind of have your worlds that you've built and, your cast of characters, and you kind of get into sort of a rhythm, and what the next book's going to be about, or where you want to see your characters go. And with writing this story, it was just I guess I would call it a book of my heart. And almost sort of a soul cleanse in some ways, because I did go through a really difficult period of my life after my divorce, and also some difficulties with family members, as well as trying to start my life over. And when I went through all of that, it was almost like I opened the door to a new life and new beginnings, and was willing to take risks, but it almost flooded me. It happened all so fast that it was like rapid fire change. And part of writing this book was also me processing what I had gone through, both good and bad, in the couple years prior. And so it's sort of it was a book for me, but also I thought it was something that would help other people as well, who are going through similar difficult times, and knowing that you just kind of got to go through it to get out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the reason that, and sort of the reason we wanted to have you on this podcast, and when we started the podcast and we sort of had this series of having guests on, is when we talk about someone being a spark in our life, is someone who just goes after the lifestyle that they want, and just their passion, and they're living their life and just doing it. And we feel like that's what you're doing. I know that you weren't always, I mean, you may have always written, but you weren't always an author, I guess. So what were you, I know a little bit about your story of how you started writing, but what were you doing before that you were a published author?
So before that, I was working in the legal industry as a paralegal, and then I was finishing up my master's degree in mediation and dispute resolution. So it's entirely different than writing, romance and mermaids and paranormal.
Right.
And it was all of this kind of happened, a few years before I started writing officially. But there was, I think it was like the 2007, 2008 crash. And so a lot of people got laid off in all of the law firms and everything. And so I was one of those that was laid off. And I had started I just said, I'm going to take any job that comes my way. I'll do temp agencies. I'll finish out my master's degree. I will do part-time marketing gigs. I mean, I was very much just, I'm going to open myself to any opportunity while, while I'm finishing out my schooling and things rebound. And then in that time, I had gotten married, and we had adopted a dog, and my dog got stolen. And so that ended up being my very first book. So my dog was stolen. And after about 3 weeks, and there's this kind of incredible sort of story where there was like death threats and psychic interventions and all this stuff, we not only rescued another dog on the way, but our dog was returned to us. And so there was something inside me that really compelled me to write this story. Now, I had no background education in creative writing or anything like that, but it was very much, I just needed to tell this story. And so I went into it thinking, all right, I'm going to write this book. And if I can raise some money for animal shelters or awareness of what people can do when they're in the same situation, then I will consider, pat on the back. I've done something to contribute to helping animals and the world. And so I did. And then I kind of I wrote the book. I had a little line in the sand, a kind of like drop date of, if no agents or traditional publishers wanted this book, I was going to teach myself self-publishing, because that's when it was just kind of up and coming.
Right.
It was still sort of brand new to the world. And so I just went on online forums, and I just started teaching myself how to do it. And I just went forward with it. And again, I'm just going to do this with the intent because I donate all of the proceeds of that book to animal shelters. So it's like,
do you still?
Yeah, I still do.
Okay.
And it doesn't sell the same as others. And it's my first book. So my writing has grown much stronger since then, but I always donate. I donate in general, like the majority of my donations are going to animal organizations all over the world. So we're very focused in that area. But so I self-published it. I treated it as professionally as I could from the beginning, with, a good cover and a website. And I had, a book signing at a local bookstore and a launch. And it kind of cruised along for a little bit after that. It didn't knock it out of the park until I really taught myself some advertising. So within 9 months, I think it was, of publishing that book, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. And that's when things changed for me, because now I was getting approached about, what else are you going to write?
Oh.
So here I'm stuck a little bit, because obviously, hopefully, my dog isn't getting stolen again. And the book was a narrative nonfiction. So it took me a good year or two after that to give myself permission to write the type of books that I like to read, which are brain candy, escape type books where you're, just cruising through them while you're at the beach, or just any of those kind of really light escape books that make you feel good at the end. And those are the books that I just devour. And so I was in Ireland and woke up from a dream, wrote it down on the paper, little pad of paper next to the bed. And that's what became the Mystic Cove series, which is my best-selling series to date.
Wow.
So it was definitely a bit of a journey to get to sort of finding my feet in this industry. But a lot of it was also giving myself permission to, you don't have to write, because I came from the legal field. So it's always like corporate and business and stuff like that. And giving myself to write something so, fanciful and whimsy and love and romance and light. And so once I got out of my own way, then things started flowing for me.
Once you started writing that series, did you then feel like, okay, now I am where I'm supposed to be? Like, this is what I was supposed to be doing all along?
Not quite. Like, so I think with any artist, we have imposter syndrome.
Yep.
So even with every book I write, and it usually happens smack dab in the middle of each book, I am convinced that, well, this is the worst thing I've ever written. Nobody's going to read this. This is horrible. Why am I even doing this? And so it's still to this day, I think people think that authors who now have a career like I do are, super confident and know exactly where their next book's going, and they know that their readers are going to love it. And that's not true. So you're always questioning if you can continue meeting reader expectations, if you can continue creating worlds that draw the reader in. And, we as artists really care about what we're making. So it took a bit, I think, before I got at least a little bit more confident in my direction and making choices of where I wanted my books to go and what my series I wanted them to look like. So I just finished, I think might be my 32nd novel. I just took it off to the editor on Friday.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's something to be really proud of.
Thank you. And I don't think I always realize or step back sometimes to appreciate those accomplishments, because you get very focused on what's next, what's your next schedule, what's your next deadline. And so, but it took a little bit to kind of, I think, hit my stride where I felt a little more confident.
You're saying that not taking time to appreciate. And we had Sutanya Dakers, she has a podcast, and she's getting ready to publish her first book. It's a memoir this summer. And she was on the podcast and she was saying, and I have an agent. She goes, I have an agent. Like, it was a big deal. And so when you're saying that, I was thinking, you're in how many books? And I think that, you're in this many books and published and all of that. And then there's someone like her who's just so excited she has an agent. And so, I think that you definitely should start appreciating some of those.
I don't have an agent.
You don't? You don't have an agent? Well, you know what? Bill Murray does not have an agent. So, by choice. So there you go.
I am not opposed to having one, but thus far, some of the agents that I've spoken to have said to me, you're already doing most of what we would do for you.
Yeah, so then there's no point.
There couldn't be agents that could be really helpful with like foreign translations or, sort of the dream of every reader or writer is maybe getting a book into a movie or a TV show, but that's virtually impossible these days. So no, I think agents really do have their uses, but I've just been running my own publishing house and I barreled ahead. Like, once I took the reins, that was it. Like, I do it all. So, and I have a team that helps me with it, of course. But something else funny about him that was like, I think he doesn't, like, you have to call a special phone number.
Yes, a special like 1-800 number. Yeah. Yeah,
which is even better. I just love we're in the era of leaning into being available.
Yes.
Like, no.
So you live on a Caribbean island and you travel and you're writing and that's your job. How do you stay focused to meet deadlines for a book? I mean, it seems like, I live on the coast, on the beach, and I write blogs and I have deadlines for brands and things like that. But and it's hard for me. So I can't imagine having to write a book. So how do you stay focused to meet these deadlines for books?
The way I look at it is that, well, one, I am deadline driven. And so it's one of those, sometimes I've been switching the way I write recently in the past year and a half to try to be consistent in writing less each day, but it makes me more efficient. So I'm not, doing 12-hour days up to that deadline. But because for the longest time, that's just how it was, like, in university when you've got the exam in the morning, like that's me working
and
all
you're cramming
possible second. But I pay my editors, I pay my book cover designers. I mean, these are all people that are part of my team. And if they have planned on, February 18th, they're getting this manuscript in and they're going to be billing me for it, and I will be paying them that month, they are relying on that for their family, for their income, for their mortgage, for their, whatever they need it for. I mean, this is something that's particularly a lot of these editors or designers or translators that I'm using, or narrators, they all also run their own businesses. So it's not like they're employed they have a guaranteed salary through the year. And so I look at that as my responsibility as someone who is paying them, that I have to meet that deadline, because I have no idea what they have to pay that month and what they've allocated those funds for. So that's one of those things that really keeps me tight on my deadlines.
That makes sense. That makes sense. When other people are depending on you, that completely makes sense. Yeah. Okay. You have this theme of strong women in your books.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that? Is it because of your background, or is that, I mean, I'm guessing that's by choice.
Yes. So it's something that I've always admired, and it's something that I've always bumped my head against, because I am a strong woman. I am someone who often people will use the word, intimidating or controlling or bossy or whatever. And instead it can just be assertive, or knows what she wants, or stands for herself, And so I was, in a lot of situations where my voice was not being heard. And I did have a few people in my life who very much appreciated strong women, and said that to me, that, like, don't lose that side of you, because your voice matters as much as any others. And so I like to reflect that in my books, but I also like to show that every strong person in general, whatever their gender, also has vulnerabilities and questions themselves. And being strong doesn't mean that you aren't vulnerable, or you don't hurt, or you don't second guess yourself. But I think being strong means that you still stand for yourself and push through whatever is pressing against you or holding you back. And so I try to write that into my characters, because I think more women, I mean, most of my characters are women, but again, for any gender, I think most people need to hear that you can be sad and scared and still go do the thing that makes you amazing also.
You're talking about that. I'm going to go back to when you were talking about imposter syndrome. I feel like that's coming up in so many conversations lately, especially with women. And I wonder, it just made me think, I wonder how many men have issues with that. Yeah. I'm just sitting here thinking, when you just said it, I thought, I was just yesterday having this conversation with a female, and recently having this conversation with another woman about imposter syndrome. And I'm just wondering how many men have issues with it. I don't know.
I sometimes feel like women are waiting for someone to give them permission to go do the thing they want to do, when they just need to do it. And because I don't think men always are looking for the permission, they're just like, oh, I'm going to go do the thing, and whatever the risk is, I'm going to go do the thing, because a lot of times it's just expected, or it's something that they've been conditioned. They can just go give it a try and see what happens, where women sometimes get more of a backlash for taking risks. Yeah. Now, that being said, I will say within my author community, and we have a pretty strong community, I will say for artists, I don't know whether that's necessarily true, because I think both genders, or whatever, however people identify, have that imposter syndrome, which is, I think, goes across the board with a creative in general. I think people question their work or question whether they should be doing their work or question whether it's good enough. And so I think that's like a couple different things between like being a creative and then running a business. And those are two different hats. If you want to be in this industry and be successful at it, those are two different hats you have to wear. So maybe in your creative side, you're feeling great about it, but then maybe you're not confident enough or able to take the risk enough to do the business side of it.
Right. That's
those are two different areas.
Right.
I think, but
right.
I agree with you that sometimes it does feel like you need permission to play in the game.
How much do you traditionally travel out of the year?
So we are our long-term goal. We are moving towards a lifestyle. We'd like to be maybe 6 months on island, 6 months off. Right now, a lot of it has been trips for work or to see family when we can travel. So that's only been a couple months out of the year, broken up through the year. And then we're trying to get back into a little bit longer trips when we can. But even so, we've got dogs. And so for me, a longer trip at most is like 3.5 weeks. I won't ever leave them too much longer than that. But so the tricky thing is that we are not quite the hub of airlines. And so when we travel, we really have to think we're bouncing around a lot more. So you want to make where you're going matter. But it was part of travel in general, as well as for my fiance, has been something that's sort of the carrot that we're working for. And those experiences are what we use to really enrich our lives. And so it's why I put my books in really beautiful destinations. Yeah. Initially I did that because I could business expense going to research there.
Oh, that's smart.
You can write in small town Ohio, or you can write in small town Ireland.
Yes.
To Ireland. But
that
it was
is so smart.
Why I did in my tequila series, those are my like humorous mystery series. I put that in the Florida Keys because I made up a fictional town called Tequila Key. And at the time I had set that up because that's where I was doing my long-term, what do I want my life to look like planning. So this was years and years ago. And so I thought, okay, eventually, like I love scuba diving. So where can I go in the United States that has good scuba diving? So is it really going to be California or the Keys? And so I thought, okay, well, I'll start working the way towards the Keys and maybe I'll never be able to live there, but maybe I can go there part of the year as I get more successful and maybe spend a few months there writing. And like, that was sort of the goal that I started working towards.
Right.
And obviously that's come into fruition in an entirely different way for me with the Caribbean now. But what I did back then, which for me, I think would speak to a lot of your followers, is I didn't put a money goal on what motivated me. I said, what do I want my perfect day to look like? So this was years ago. This was back when I was living in Wisconsin, cold winters, everything. And I wrote that I wanted my perfect day to be, I live somewhere where I could get up and go scuba diving. I could grab an iced coffee and I could write in the afternoons. And I kept it really simple, but I was, how do I want my every single day to look? Like, do I want to be getting up and going into a corporate office every day? Do I want to be living in a fabulous city somewhere? Like, I just went through, like, what do I want my actual day-to-day to look like?
Yeah.
And then work towards that, because it doesn't matter, 500,000, million, whatever, the money in the bank, it's only going to make you happy to a point. And then you're always going to say, what's next? Whereas your actual, how you're living your life is so much more impactful on your day-to-day. And so that's been my goal all along. And I've reached that now. Like that's the life I now live. Like it, I started publishing in 2012 and here I am. Like, this is my goal and this is what I've reached. So
that is wonderful.
Mental wellness is something we talk a lot about here on Honor Adventures, which is great. It should be part of the daily conversation. Mental wellness is important. We wanted to share a resource that we love, have used, and refer to others, and is a game changer in helping you find a therapist to match your specific needs.
Full transparency, I remember being at one of my lowest points a few years ago, desperate for help, needing a therapist who had a specific skill set. I'd been calling around, Googling, trying to make a connection with someone who could help me. No one understood the level of grief I was experiencing. And when I finally called my local crisis and assessment center, thinking they could help me, I couldn't get help there either. Here's the thing. Finding a therapist should not be this difficult.
We have found a wonderful resource that takes all of the difficulty away from matching you with a therapist to fit your specific needs and preferences. It's Mental Health Match.
Mental Health Match literally takes the stress out of finding a therapist by answering just a few questions. It's free to use, takes minutes, and is the easiest way to find a therapist. You can choose therapy approaches, topics to tackle, skills you want to learn, and if there are traits about a therapist that are important to you, you can choose those too. If price is a concern, you can choose insurance, no insurance. You can search that route as well. You can also find therapy options for in-person or virtual.
Once you have your therapist matches, you can choose whether or not you want to share your information or contact them on your own.
Like I said, I've used this. We've shared this with friends and family who have used this option. It's such an easy process. We encourage you to give it a try. Finding someone to talk to is so important in maintaining mental wellness. Visit mentalhealthmatch.com to find a therapist that is the best match for you.
It's the easiest way to find a therapist.
I mean, you're just living the life. That's great. Okay, so you have several series of books and you have 3 standalones. And the most recent was last summer's One Way Ticket, which again, I loved. And I finished it, speaking of the Keys, on the plane on the way to Key West.
Oh, nice.
And it was so timely. This could be a whole other story. My dad is in the Hemingway Lookalike Society.
I saw your photos. So good.
He's in that. He is still a pot that, they call Hemingway. When you win, you're a papa, because that was his nickname, was Papa. And so when you win the Hemingway Lookalike contest in Key West, you're a papa. And so Dad is still a papa wannabe. So we still go every year. We're going to go in July. But anyway, I finished it on the way there and I loved it. But it was so timely when it came out because people were still, not a lot of people had gone to the contest because it was still, kind of iffy about travel. Yeah, COVID. But I think it was really timely because people wanted to read a book like that about travel, and they were still so excited, and people are still a little bit fearful about getting out and traveling. So I love those types of books. And so do you plan on writing more standalone books like that?
So that's funny you ask. I just outlined one yesterday.
Oh.
And so I'm actually gonna wait and see with my schedule. So I'm starting a new series the first book comes out in May. And so I was thinking I have a tendency to bounce between series, oh, shiny new thing. And I'm going to write over here and I'm going to write in this world and I'll go visit Siren Island and write there. And so I think what I'm going to do is, the responsible part of me would be to write the first 3 books in this series right in a row. So this is an Irish spin-off series. And just get those out for sales and so people, it's kind of like when you're watching Netflix and you want to read a bunch, not just one. But I think what I'm going to do is it's another kind of island escape standalone that I think would be so much fun. It's like the show Schitt's Creek meets the movie Overboard kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And so I was having a ton of fun with it. And I think what I might do is play with it in the background while I'm working on the other ones as just a no pressure project. So no deadline, no anything, but when I want kind of a brain cleanse from the other world that I'm working on, go play in that. So I definitely, I think there will be another one on the way. It's just I'm not putting any pressure on myself of when I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's a nice escape for you to write, and it's a nice escape for people to read it too. So that's convenient for everybody. Well, we always put out an email to our audience, letting them know who we're recording with, and so we had some questions.
Okay.
That if you're okay with us asking you some questions.
Okay.
So we picked a few of them, and these are really fun. So the first one is, how often do you scuba dive? Because you're a big scuba diver. Mm-hmm. How often do you scuba dive? And would you ever write an autobiography about your experiences in the sea?
I don't know about an autobiography. Maybe I need, a couple more decades of scuba diving to really bring in like the best of the experiences.
Right.
But I dive a lot. This past month or two, not as much as usual, because we've just been really just busy, unfortunately. But so typically I ended up moving more towards night diving, because then I can get my work day done. And at night, there's so many more interesting little critters out. And so it's a much more macro life. And I'm always on the hunt for, we call them, they're nudie branks. So either if you know it, you know it, you don't. But they're really fancy. They're like fancy underwater slugs. And they're really fun to photograph, and learning to photograph at night and something incredibly small has been a challenge that it's been really good for my brain, because it's like a different type of being creative and without putting any sort of pressure on it. I do have what we call a reader magnet, which is a download of a bunch of my underwater photos that my readers love these photos. And so it's like I put it at the end of a couple of my mermaid books, and I call it Mermaid View. And it's just a free download if people sign up for my newsletter.
Okay.
And it just has a bunch of those photos, but I don't think I want to put the pressure on myself of changing something that's a passion and something I really enjoy into making it a business. Yeah. And so for me, no, I probably won't ever write a book, but yeah, I'm in the water a lot, and usually at night, which is when most people are scared to go in.
I was going to say it would be a little scary to me. I don't know why. I've said before, I walk Betty down to the ocean every day, and I love it. And I can walk, and it's gorgeous, and I look at it, and I see, we'll see dolphins in the mornings and stuff. And then I walk down there at night, and it's still like pretty, but I look at it and I go, wonder what's down under there. Yeah, like it just looks scarier. I don't know why. But
well, different things are out at night and different feeding cycles. So, definitely sharks and stuff like that will feed more at night, depending. Yeah. But to me, it's like being on the moon, because you only see what's in your torch and your light under the water, and it really brings your focus in, and it's cool. I mean, I actually just discovered a nudie brank here that hasn't been recorded in the Caribbean, and they've put it in the National Museum of, like, the photos of it in the National Museum in the Netherlands, and it's coming out.
Did they credit you?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a scientist now.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we'll link your newsletter in the show notes, so that person too can definitely sign up for that if they haven't, just in case, and if anybody else is interested. I love this next question. You have said you believe in mermaids. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen anything that you couldn't explain in the ocean or anywhere else? Or do you just like to be more imaginative about the paranormal?
Well, there's always, on almost every night dive, I come home and have to look something up. So, I mean, there's constantly stuff that I am seeing and looking at and going, like, there's just, the ocean's got a lot of really cool, but also really weird stuff. And so I will, always come home and be looking through my photos and pulling up books and trying to find out what stuff is. And as well as sometimes just the mannerisms of certain fish that are interacting in weird ways that you've never seen before. However, when it comes to actually believing in mermaids, yes, I do. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the ocean is massive. And these myths have gone on for hundreds upon thousands of years of sailors and people who by the water are seeing things they cannot explain. So I think I kind of liken it to aliens.
I was going to say, just like space,
space. I mean, I'm not saying that 100% there are mermaids, but I'm saying there's a lot we still don't know about the ocean. And you see these deep, the science explorers who are watching those like 3,000 foot cameras, and then you get like those really weird whatever ocean things swimming in front of the camera, and all the scientists are like, whoa, what's that?
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe one of these days it might be a mermaid. So I'm choosing to be hopeful that maybe one day we see something amazing like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay. And then you've kind of addressed this a little bit, but as a writer, do you feel stuck in a certain genre, or do you ever feel like you could write a series about something completely different or want to, and how would your audience respond?
So I am sort of, I do not follow the rules in a lot of what I do with publishing. And a lot of my author friends kind of laugh at me for this, because a lot of them just brand exactly their series and they stay in their lane, and that is what they write, and that is what they're known for. So a good example of this would be Nora Roberts. And then she also writes as J.D. Robb. She writes the In Death series. So that's with like Eve and Rourke, and it's like set in 100 years from now in the future, and it's a cop series. And so she's same author, but she's completely divided. Whereas I have a couple narrative nonfictions, I have paranormal romance, I have cozy mystery, and I have contemporary romance, and I've put
all
them
under the
all
same
under
name.
my name. And I've just dragged my readers along with me. Like, this is what I feel like writing. And if you like it, read it. And if it's not your jam, then read one of my other series.
Right.
Sometimes I do feel a little like, would it have been smarter or better for me to, stay in the lane and follow the advice of what everyone else was doing? But I've found my own success, and I get to write what I want to write. So at this point, I have enough of a following and enough readers who will take a chance on the next thing that I'm writing. They're just willing to follow me wherever I go. So, no, I don't think I feel as stuck the way some authors might. But the alternative to that is, if you really, really want to write, say, post-apocalyptic, and your romance readers aren't going to read it, you just pick a pen name.
Yeah. Did this person didn't ask this, I'm just curious. Do you feel like you have a different audience for one series than the other? Or do you feel like they all kind of cross over?
People will cross over, but they have fan favorites. I actually just did a survey with my readers recently, and there is definitely a dividing line of people who really want more in one world versus some of my others. But I think because a lot of my series all carry the similar element of light, fun, magical. If it's a mystery or if it's a romance, people are still getting that kind of same feeling. And I think that's probably the uniting factor across most of my books.
Okay. So now we have the rapid fire, which is never very rapid fire. We just call it that. The first one is sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Beaches or mountains?
Beaches.
Of course.
Or a cliff in Ireland overlooking the water.
Okay. Book or audio?
Book. I don't even listen to my own audiobooks. Alan put it on in the car once, like we were on a road trip, and we were like, let's listen to this. And I was like, oh, stop. I can't.
You can't do it.
I was like, this is the worst. He's like, it's your book. I'm like, I know, but it's just making me think of all the things I should have phrased it this way, or I could have written it this way. I'm like, turn it off.
It's like an actor who can't watch their own film.
It's like, no.
Oh, that's funny. Boat or plane?
The only boats I really like are dive boats. So if I'm like, we just went to the Galapagos with the whale sharks and the hammerheads, and we're away for an entire week, that was amazing.
Yeah.
But I otherwise plane. Yeah.
Okay. Handwritten letter or email?
It depends largely on the subject matter, but email.
Okay.
And also because where I live, mail is so unreliable. I have gotten birthday cards and Christmas cards a year later, and it costs me like $100 to ship anything off the island. So mail has gone like the way of it's not an option.
Do you even, and by the way, we canceled Prime, so it's not like I'm trying to push Amazon. I'm just curious. Do you get Amazon?
So what we have to do is we ship it to a warehouse in Miami. They hold it for an entire month, and you build all your packages up, and then they container ship it down.
Oh.
So there's no like showing up at your door the next day with stuff. And then if
no
you
Amazon Prime.
Right. If you want it a little bit sooner, you can there's another company that you can have it flown in, but it costs more.
Wow. But you know what? I mean, the good outweighs the bad. I mean,
yes,
seriously.
It definitely, like, one of the things with island living in general is learning to live with inconvenience. And then it also is learning that you don't need as much as you think. And I mean, I find myself getting caught up in wanting to look at the new fashions and the new coats and the new jeans and all that. I don't wear jeans here. I don't wear coats here. Anytime I do travel now, I'm like 5-6 years behind whatever is currently fashionable anyway. I'm like, well, it's because you dig it out from under your bed and like clean the mold off of. You're like,
right.
Jacket, I guess we'll have to do.
Right. I'm sitting here thinking how Jerry and I refer to living here as island time. We're like, well, you know, you call the plumber. I mean, this is island time. They're never going to get here, but you give a whole new meaning to island time. Like, a whole new meaning. My
first year here, I had to really adjust my expectations of when things were ever going to get done, whether it was contractors, packages, going out to eat. So like when we go out to eat now, we take a little travel cribbage board with us. And we play cribbage while we wait because it'll usually take a full game before the meal comes. And that's just island, like that's just the way it is. So slow living and get angry about it, or we have a drink and play a card game.
That is, you know what? That's great. That is just, I think that's a great way to adjust. I wish I could adjust that way. I hope that one day I do. I think that's a wonderful way to be.
I still have my moments. I'm not going to lie.
Where is my food? Okay. Barefoot or shoes?
Barefoot.
Okay. And this is Jerry's favorite because he says you could tell so much about someone with this. Ketchup or mustard?
Oh, it's tough. Well, if it's American style ketchup, I like ketchup. Ketchup's different in different countries.
Okay.
The taste of it is different. So if it's American style ketchup or from the States, I would probably go ketchup, but I do like a mix of ketchup and mustard.
I love the mix of ketchup and mustard. That was my answer. I am completely the mix.
Well, you know,
I
the
agree.
thing here is you don't get served ketchup and mustard. You get mayonnaise. Like mayo or aioli is the big like dipping sauce.
I love aioli. Dolphins or sharks?
Oh, so both I love. Both are very they're very different in how they interact with you, and particularly depending on the shark. So I'm someone, if you say there's sharks in the water, I'm going in. So I go spend as much time with and around sharks as I can because I think they're absolutely incredible. They're so important for our oceans. Like a healthy ocean has sharks, and we need healthy oceans. Dolphins, depending on if they have a baby with them or not, are a little bit more interactive than sharks. Because they're playful, and so you can interact with them in a different way. You can sing to them underwater in your regulator. So you can sing and like dance and interact. And if they're in a playful and curious mood, they'll often maybe come over and interact with you. Not always, but sometimes they do, because dolphins are very smart. If they have a baby with them, they won't as much. So it's hard for me to choose between, because they're entirely different interactions.
I figured you were going to say I can't choose. That's what I figured you were going to say.
I love both. But I will say, kind of like we were talking about earlier with the pit bull advocacy, I will go with sharks, because I think more people need to hear how truly incredible, and more often than not, sharks are scared of you than anything.
Yeah.
So, and this is me coming off of, I just was in the water with hundreds upon hundreds of hammerhead sharks, silky sharks, Galapagos sharks, tiger sharks. Like, I have whale sharks. I've had a ton of interaction with sharks, and they're absolutely incredible. So
do they let you touch them?
You don't touch the wildlife ever.
Okay.
The only time you ever would really need to touch a shark is if they are starting to exhibit some of the hunting behaviors, which maybe if they come and like bump you and they're getting curious to what you are, you can give them a little nudge back. But honestly, that's so rare for that to happen.
Interesting.
And same with and the whale sharks are so big, you don't touch them. They'll just you could get hit with a fin and knocked out, and
Wow.
But yeah, if people take anything away, is that sharks are incredible, and please stop hating on them. They're not scary. They're beautiful.
Good PSA. Tequila or whiskey?
Oh, I'm gonna go whiskey. I have to go whiskey.
Okay. Nap in a hammock or walk on the beach?
I'm not a good napper, so I'm going to say either read a book in a hammock or
Okay. And then this is the final question, which we think is the most important one. What does a life well lived mean to you?
So I've been thinking about that, and I think it kind of goes back to what we had talked about when I was saying like what my perfect day looks like. So ultimately, a life well lived to me means flexibility and freedom. So creating a life where you get to be the one to make choices that are best for you. So for me, that means being able to travel while I work and being able to have these new experiences, particularly with someone I love by my side. And so it really does come down to, I guess, having some sort of, real power over your own destiny and your own direction.
Like, and coupled with what you said earlier, that you truly have manifested sort of what that life well lived is. I think that you have done it, which I think is wonderful. You have a book coming up that's in May. Okay.
So I actually have a book publishing in March, and then I have a book publishing in May. And then I have a pre-order for my mermaid series in October that's set up. I haven't written that book yet. But yeah, so I try to set up pre-orders and have those deadlines ahead of time, so I sort of know what I'm looking at writing, in the upcoming year. So this year is going to a little bit different because we are getting married in Scotland in June. And so
Whoa! Congratulations.
Thank you. It has been delayed for 2 years now. So,
so thanks, COVID.
Yes, we're going to work a little time. Like, I'll have to adjust my schedule a little bit around that. But yeah.
Tell our listeners where they can find you.
So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tricia O'Malley Author. My website is triciaomalley.com. I briefly ventured out into TikTok. We'll see how that goes. That's Tricia O'Malley Books on TikTok.
Okay. And we're going to link all of that in the show notes. And then we're also going to link how they can sign up for your newsletter. And I also love, because I want to start reading the Althea Rose series.
The Tequila Key ones, yeah.
Yes, I want to start reading that. But I love that you because I get a little intimidated with what are you supposed to read first. But I love that you listed how you're supposed to read them, like the order.
Yes.
I love that. So I'm going to link that too, because I know that will be a question for people of what do I read first? So I love that you did that. So I'm going to link that in the show notes too. So
Thank you.
We are so thankful that you did this, and thank you so much for being on the show. This was wonderful.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Well, you know what? That was about as relaxing and wonderful as I thought it would be. You know, we have interacted with Tricia in emails and sort of, DMs and things like that before, but had never virtually or physically met with her. And I just loved her. I thought she was wonderful.
I was kind of just totally enthralled by what she was saying. I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So, Jerry, of course, couldn't be part of the virtual, podcast recording, but when I do the editing and the things for the after podcast, Jerry is very much involved. And, after some of these podcast recordings, we end up going back through them 3 and 4 times, but Jerry has now visually and audibly heard it and seen it a few times. So now he feels like he has met her as well.
Yeah, I do. And it was a case where let me show you some pieces of this. And I said, well, I got kind of into it where I kind of watched the whole thing all the way through. So
Tricia, that podcast episode, of course, here we are in March. We recorded that at the end of February, but here we are in March, and we live on the coast of North Carolina. It's still cold. It was almost 90 where she is. I think she said it was 87 degrees. She had the AC on a Caribbean island, living the dream. It's all about perspective. We all can look at someone else's life and say, oh my God, they're living the dream. I have this sticker actually on my laptop that says, the old you would be so proud of this you. I think you can look at where you have been and where you are now. And you can always, think, oh gosh, I'm so glad I am where I am now. And I remember where we would, when we owned our own business and would say, oh God, I remember we always had the goal of one day living by the ocean, and here we are. And even on bad days, I try to remember that.
It's all about perspective.
It is.
That's for darn sure.
It is. It is. So I think that, one of the things, this is where we always talk about some of the takeaways I did not know, is that she donates a portion of the proceeds of her books to animal advocacy groups. I love that. Then her first book of how she got started in writing, was about her own dog. And the story about her dog was stolen, and, her dog was returned to her, thank God. But I love the personal aspect of her whole journey. And, she was working in the legal field. And then this monumental thing that happened in her life brought her to writing. And I just love when someone has this thing that happens in their life that takes them on a whole new journey. And then they're, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of like, we can relate to that. I mean, who would have thought that we'd be on this journey that we're on now, Yeah.
And I must feel that's the value I think anybody could get from writing. If you're at a portion of your life where there's a lot of overwhelm, there's something big that happened, that's a way to sort through it. You start writing, and I'm guessing that's what she discovered there.
Yeah, that's what she said about that, all the overwhelm that she was dealing with, like with her divorce and
get it out of your head and onto paper, and then to actually discover it there, and then to continue with that, to realize what the value of that, and to continue it through the rest of your life from that point is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. I love that we got to know her on a personal level, but it really just made me want to go through the other series that she has of her books. And, I really enjoyed her.
I feel that she was a little more low key, possibly, than a few of our guests have been.
Yeah.
And that worked out really kind of in a unique way that, we haven't had quite somebody like her yet. For instance, the rapid fire,
which they're never so rapid fire.
They're never that rapid fire, but some people, I try to flow them through, and then some people usually try to flow them through too. And with her, you could tell that everyone was pretty well thought out. And I like that.
I do too.
She would break them down and go, okay, let me tell you about sharks and dolphins. And we got this really cool little breakdown of each one. And I thought, this is funny. It was really cool.
This entire podcast was so much more than her just being a spark in our life. It was so much more of a learning experience about so much more than just that. It was about Caribbean life. It was about sea life. It was about how you get inspired about writing, and it was about self-publishing, and it was about just so many things.
Yeah, I felt I'm halfway on my way to some sort of amateur certificate on oceanography with what she described. Where could I carry this knowledge?
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that I really love about her too is, of course, no matter what you're into, you were just talking about how she is sort of a different laid back plane than some of the other guests that we've had. She truly is. I mean, the beach reads, the escape reads. We love that she's all about travel and adventure. And that's what I love about her. And she really sort of makes my blood pressure kind of go down a little bit. It's just in a good way, just makes me relax. Her books just puts me in just sort of instead of being so amped and anxiety ridden, it just puts me in just an escapism, good place.
A great balance for what my actions do to your blood pressure. I think we found the balance there. Tricia O'Malley, stay in our lives.
Yes, and if you want a heads up on our guests prior to recording, you can be on our VIP list, which, by the way, is just our newsletter list. We'll put a link down in the show notes, and then that way you can get a heads up on who is coming up with our recordings, and you can submit questions so that you can ask our guests questions so that we can pick some of those and we can ask them on the recording episodes. And if you want to know more about Tricia O'Malley and any of her books or anything that she has coming up, we're going to put that down in the show notes too.
You can always find us at arneradventures.com, on Instagram at arneradventures, also linked in the show notes. So until next time, enjoy the journey that you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Bye.